My fingers smoothed the hem of my midnight dress. It was a minimalist Stella McCartney, though you wouldn't know it, and neither would anyone here. I picked up another tray of sparkling wine. Around me, the Ridgemont Country Club ballroom was a sea of floor-length gowns, shiny cufflinks, and the carefully practiced murmur of small talk. This was the annual holiday benefit, my mother's personal Charleston stage, where looking the part always trumped genuine feeling. Just a year ago, at this same event, they'd raised a toast to my cousin Isabel. She'd just landed a senior director role at some big New York hedge fund. Tonight, I was just part of the catering staff. Cameron, sweetheart. Mom's voice, all soft sugar with that familiar hidden edge she used when disguising a criticism as a concern. The Langstons are looking for a refill. Chop chop. I just nodded, saying nothing. The Langstons. Funny, I quietly managed their trust fund through one of my low-key fintech setups in Zurich. Still making the rounds with the catering, are we? Isabel's voice, slick as the sequins on her dress, sidled up beside me. Her smirk was practically an accessory. Or is it event work now? Something over in Berlin, wasn't it? If event work was her term for structuring cross-border acquisitions as CEO of Novastar Capital Group, then sure, why not? I let the silence stretch, balancing my tray as I walked past her. "Oh, Cameron," she called after me, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Mother said to send you to the kitchen once you're done out here. Apparently the hired help is struggling." The hired help. She meant the top-tier culinary team I'd personally flown in from Lyon. Paid for, of course, by an anonymous grant from my holding company's charitable arm. The caviar, the baccarat glassware, even the nuanced lighting design, all arranged. Under various aliases. Let them think it was just a fortunate coincidence. "Cameron!" My stepfather's voice boomed across the ballroom. "Ice! The Densons are running low." The Densons, my latest acquisition target, their agricultural tech startup, had been desperately seeking capital just last week. A request I denied, naturally. They'd never guessed the woman refreshing their drinks was the one who'd axed their funding. As I moved across the room, my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. I slipped behind a marble pillar and glanced at the screen. A message from Aiko Nakamura. Subject, Singapore deal. Closed at 680. Investor board approved. APAC expansion next. I typed back with one hand. In a meeting. We'll follow up. I looked out at the crowd, laughing, clinking glasses, completely oblivious. In about an hour, the MC would tap the microphone. The room would quiet, and he'd announce the evening's surprise keynote speaker. And just like that, the girl in the simple midnight dress wouldn't just be the help anymore. "We'll talk later," I typed quickly, slipping the phone into my small clutch. It was easier to let them think I was caught up in some mundane business call than to explain I was serving drinks at my own mother's fundraiser because my family still saw me as their charmingly directionless disappointment. "Who's texting you now?" Isabel reappeared, her voice syrupy with sarcasm. She twirled her champagne flute. "Your manager at that little import shop in Berlin? Still trying to keep that afloat?" I offered a faint smile. That little import thing was now a logistics holding entity spanning 3 continents. But sure, I thought. Let them believe I'm scrambling for hours just to make rent. "Just work," I murmured, my gaze sweeping the ballroom. "Oh, Cameron," Mom interrupted, suddenly beside us, glittering in emerald. "Did you hear? Isabel just closed another massive deal for her firm. 10 million in quarterly bonuses alone. Isn't that fantastic?" I nodded politely. "Very impressive," I said, hiding the fact I'd cleared more than that before 9 a.m. that morning from a leveraged buyout in Taiwan. Dad emerged from a huddle of donors, the Denson couple trailing him with strained smiles. "Isabel's really showing what a Hamilton can accomplish with proper focus," he beamed, pointedly not looking at me. I caught the slight tremor in Mr. Denson's hand as he reached for his flute. Understandable, since my firm had just days ago declined their last-ditch financing proposal. Not everyone's cut out for corporate life, Isabel chimed in, eyeing the tray in my hands. Some of us find our niche, well, she gestured vaguely. Keep wandering. Mom sighed, a hand fluttering to her pearl necklace. We gave Cameron everything. Swiss schools, Ivy League internships, but she always insisted on doing things her own way. Remember when she turned down that analyst job I got for her at Morgan? Isabel added, making air quotes around, build something of her own. Now she's pouring drinks. I suppose someone has to. My phone lit up again. Royal Investment Council confirmed. Buckingham Palace breakfast. Jet fueled and cleared. Mom noticed. Always glued to that phone. No wonder you can't hold down a proper job. Actually, I began. Oh, let her scroll, Isabel cut in. She's probably checking for gig shifts. Poor thing. Dad gave a theatrical sigh. At least pitch in tonight. The kitchen crew's behind on cleanup. Something inside me, a patient, coiled thing, finally shifted. For 3 years, I'd worn this disguise, letting them see what they wanted to see, letting them believe I'd drifted, failed. 3 years of anonymously funding this very party, their pet charities, even their vacation homes, all through quiet endowments. I set down the tray with deliberate calm. I really should go, I said softly. Go where? Isabel scoffed. I have a meeting, I replied, lifting my chin. They don't like to wait. And with that, I turned and walked towards the main doors, where my car and driver were already waiting. The keynote speaker was about to make her entrance. And tonight, they'd finally learn my name. Isabel's laugh, loud and a bit too shrill, cut through the ballroom chatter, turning heads. A meeting at this hour? With who? Cameron? Some kitchen porter discussing night shift rotations? Her grin widened. Cameron, enough, Mom snapped, her tone suddenly sharp. You'll stay and help clean up. It's the least you can do after all we've spent on this night. All this expense. The venue, the orchestra, the rare Bordeaux they paraded like a family heirloom. It had all come from my accounts, quietly funneled through 3 holding firms and 2 anonymous donors. Isabel, playing to the nearby guests, raised her glass in a mock toast. The help doesn't leave until the job's done, right? Isn't that right, sister dear? A few chuckles rippled through the onlookers. Their eyes flicked to me, a mix of pity and what looked like judgment. They thought they knew my story. The Densons, practically begging for capital. The Langstons, whose hedge fund I'd discreetly bailed out last winter. Isabel, bragging about a $10 million deal that wouldn't even register as a blip on my financial radar. My phone buzzed again. James. Car's ready. Weather clear. For London. Pilot standing by. I looked down at the tray in my hands, then around the room. The champagne I was serving? Paid for by me. The gala centerpieces? Designed by a firm under my foundation's event arm. The very walls of this ballroom? Leased long-term by a subsidiary I'd purchased last spring. Maybe it was time for a little reminder. Actually, I said, setting the tray down gently, I do have an important meeting. Dad's face started to turn a shade of crimson. More important than your mother's charity gala? More important than family? Isabel rolled her eyes. What are you doing, Cam? Helping someone restock grocery shelves tonight? I smoothed the front of my dress, a tailored piece from Milan I'd picked up on my last trip. The Patek Philippe on my wrist ticked with quiet indifference. Something like that, I replied, glancing at the time. You are not leaving, Mom snapped, stepping closer. You'll stay and clean, Cameron. That's what you're good for. A hush fell. Guests turned, fascinated. An argument? A little scandal? Perfect. I smiled calmly and raised my phone. Let me just make a quick call. Gasps and whispers. Isabel looked gleeful, clearly expecting some embarrassing meltdown. James, I said clearly into the phone. Please come up, and bring the Henderson contracts with you. Mr. Denson choked on his champagne. The what? Before anyone could react, the grand ballroom doors swung open. James, my COO, stepped in first, immaculate as ever in a dark, tailored suit. Behind him, my executive team filed in, briefcases in hand, expressions cool and professional. James gave a slight bow. Madam, the jet is fueled and ready, he continued smoothly. Also, the royal family's investment advisors have moved the meeting to a breakfast session at Buckingham Palace. They're eager to finalize terms on the merger. You could have heard a pin drop. Isabel's smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then something rapidly approaching panic. Thank you, James, I said calmly. I turned to Mr. Denson, whose face had gone waxy pale. My apologies for the secrecy, Mr. Denson. I wanted to evaluate your company's potential firsthand before disclosing my role. Unfortunately, as CEO of Novastar Capital Group, I don't believe your current structure is sustainable without immediate and significant reform. Novastar, my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. But that's the largest private investment firm in Europe. And expanding globally, I supplied gently. I glanced at Isabel. That little import company you've all been mocking? Just one of our dozens of subsidiaries. Dad took a physical step back, his expression utterly vacant. You couldn't. That's impossible. Couldn't what? I asked, tilting my head. Couldn't build a global firm from scratch? Couldn't become the youngest female CEO on the Financial Times 500 list? Couldn't do it all while serving your drinks, and apparently being expected to clean your kitchens. Isabel stumbled, one hand gripping the back of a chair for support. But I'm the one who succeeded. I'm Senior VP at Goldman. Right, I said, nodding. About that. I gestured, and Daniela, my Chief of Global Acquisitions, stepped forward with a crisp folder. Goldman's board finalized our acquisition of your specific division this morning, Ms. Hamilton, Daniela said briskly. Effective next week, you'll be reporting to our Asia-Pacific director, assuming, of course, we decide to retain your position. The murmur started then, low at first, then spreading like an electric current across the ballroom. This gala, I said, sweeping a hand across the glittering room, funded entirely by me, via 4 shell companies. The building you're standing in? Purchased last June. And the champagne you're drinking? Bottled at my vineyard in Provence. Mom sank into a nearby chair, clutching her pearls as if they were a life raft. Her voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? I gave a soft, almost sad laugh. Would you have listened? You didn't even trust me with an entry-level analyst role. So I let you believe what you wanted to believe. Dad's face was a mask of confusion and dawning horror. Cameron, You needed me, I said quietly, letting the truth land. That's the difference. The Denson's miracle recovery last year? That wasn't fate. It was me under a pseudonym. That anonymous investor group that saved your firm from bankruptcy, Dad? Also me. Isabel looked like she might actually be sick. And those London meetings you couldn't stop bragging about, Isabel? A tall, silver-haired man stepped forward from my team, his English accent crisp. She was meeting with me. I oversee Novastar's UK operations. I turned back to the stunned crowd, my voice steady and clear. You all thought I was background, noise, but you've been living in a world built on my quiet efforts. Just then, the main doors opened again. Lord Sheffield entered, exuding that effortless poise of old money and international power. His tailored overcoat still bore a hint of the cool Charleston night air. Terribly sorry I'm late, Cameron, he said, his voice rich and unmistakably British. Traffic from the airfield was simply ghastly. Quite all right, Charles, I smiled. You're just in time for the grand finale. My mother's eyes widened, flicking between me and Lord Sheffield, her social radar whirring despite her shock. You know each other? Oh, very well, Lord Sheffield chuckled. Cameron's firm manages the majority of the royal family's private investment accounts. Brilliant woman, truly. I'm often just trying to keep up. He turned to me, shaking his head playfully. Though I must admit, Cameron, I didn't expect to find you personally handing out flutes of champagne. That was intentional, Charles, I said evenly. I wanted to see just how long my family would continue to underestimate me while unknowingly living off the fruits of my labor. James stepped forward, phone discreetly in hand. Madam, we should depart shortly if we intend to arrive for the London breakfast. I turned to face the room one last time. My family was frozen, their expressions a painful mix of shock, confusion, and a dawning horrified regret. I'd stay and help with the cleanup, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. But I have a meeting at Buckingham Palace in about 10 hours. I'm sure you'll all understand. Cameron, wait. Mom stood abruptly, her hands trembling. We can talk, as a family. Family? I paused, letting the word hang in the air. Family doesn't mock their daughter's ambitions. Family doesn't dismiss her achievements and then try to take credit for her successes. My voice was cool but resolute. But don't worry. I'll have my CFO forward the consolidated invoices for all the events and expenses I've covered over the years, since family means so much to you. Isabel stepped forward, her earlier arrogance gone, replaced by a practiced, desperate concern. Sister, surely we can what, Isabel? I asked. Pretend a little longer? Keep the illusion going while you flash around titles that I technically own the division for? She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Enjoy your new reporting structure in the Asia-Pacific office. I hear junior analysts there work quite a bit harder than VPs in your former department. Dad finally found his voice, a strained pleading sound. You can't just walk out on your family. I looked him directly in the eye. Watch me. I nodded to James. He opened the grand ballroom doors. As I walked forward, the crowd instinctively parted, whispers trailing behind me like shadows. Lord Sheffield fell into step beside me, a restrained but definite grin on his face. Well played, Cameron, he murmured. Worth flying in a bit early for this. Thank you for the impeccable timing with the royal breakfast detail, Charles, I replied softly. It really sealed it. Oh, that part's quite real. Lord Sheffield grinned as we stepped into the private elevator. Her Majesty is thoroughly impressed with your investment strategy, though I doubt she pictured her top financial advisor moonlighting with a champagne tray. I laughed, the tension finally starting to ease from my shoulders. I figured it was the most efficient way to let them reveal their true colors. As the elevator doors began to close, I caught one last glimpse of the ballroom. My past. Mom was slumped in her chair, eyes hollow. Dad stared into the distance, stunned into silence. And Isabel? Frantically typing on her phone, no doubt, trying to salvage the wreckage of her collapsing career. James, I said as we descended, my voice calm, almost cheerful. Make sure the actual cleaning staff receives a very generous bonus tonight. He nodded. Absolutely, madam. I smiled to myself, remembering Isabel's earlier jab. Someone had to serve the drinks, after all. Later that evening, soaring 40,000 feet above the Atlantic, I reclined in the plush leather chair of my private jet, enveloped in soft silence and the distant glimmer of starlight. My phone buzzed endlessly on the table beside me, notifications piling up as news of my identity began to ripple through the very social circles my family had always worshipped. Mom. Cameron, please. We need to talk. We didn't know. Isabel. About that analyst job offer. Maybe we could revisit. Dad. The board wants an urgent meeting. Call me. I deleted them all without a second thought. Instead, I turned back to the contracts spread across the polished mahogany table in front of me. One detailed a merger in Tokyo, another outlined an expansion into Sao Paulo. Let them sit with it. Let them feel the full weight of what and who they'd dismissed. Let them replay every condescending remark, every dismissive glance, all while realizing they were sipping champagne I paid for, under a roof I owned. Sometimes the most powerful statements aren't shouted, they're lived. They're built in the quiet, away from the doubting eyes, and then revealed, not for revenge, but as a simple declaration of fact. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had to build your success in the shadows while others basked in a spotlight you quietly powered, then you know exactly how it felt to stand in that ballroom. I didn't make a scene to hurt them. I made a choice to stop hiding. My story isn't just about wealth. It's about the quiet strength it takes to become who you are meant to be, especially when no one else sees it coming. And if you're out there, still building, still waiting for your moment, keep going. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's the foundation of everything you're about to become. One day, your name will be the one they whisper with awe.